My dad lifted his glass like he was about to bless the room, but instead he said, "Some kids make you proud. Others just take up space." The table burst into laughter. My brother smirked. My mother stared at her plate. And me? I simply smiled at the man who had spent my entire life pretending I was invisible and said, "Good thing I just got my own place 3,000 miles away." The room froze. Forks in midair, eyes wide. They thought that was the moment everything changed. They had no idea what I had already discovered nor what I was about to expose. Growing up in our Indianapolis home looked peaceful from the outside. Neighbors waved, streets stayed quiet, maple trees turned gold in the fall. But inside, everything revolved around my father's definition of worth, a definition that started and ended with my brother Mason. His football trophies gleamed down the hallway like a shrine. Meanwhile, my academic certificates were stuffed into drawers under old manuals. When Mason scored a touchdown, Dad clapped him on the back so hard the whole house heard it. When I brought home a science award, Dad would say, "That's nice, Nora. Don't make your brother feel bad." Mom wasn't cruel, just terrified of conflict. She stirred pots that didn't need stirring whenever voices rose. She whispered, "Just let it go, sweetheart," like my feelings were burdens she had to hide. That silence shaped me more sharply than any insult my father ever spoke. The basement became my refuge. Upstairs was ESPN and Mason's victories. Downstairs was soldering irons, broken radios, and machines that didn't care about favorites, only precision. Grandma Eleanor was the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered. She visited every Saturday with pastries and warm eyes, listening to me explain whatever project cluttered my workbench. "You see the world differently, Nora," she'd say. "Don't let anyone convince you that's wrong." She said it softly, like she knew softness didn't survive long in our house. When I got accepted into a top engineering program across the country, Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "That far? Figure it out yourself." So I did. I worked nights, saved every dollar, and boarded a plane with a backpack and a scholarship letter no one had congratulated me for. Distance didn't change him. Some people refuse to see you even when you stand right in front of them. And that Thanksgiving night, when he lifted his glass and announced, "I took up space," something inside me finally clicked into place. Not anger, clarity. I lifted my own glass and smiled. A real smile. "Good thing I just got my own place 3,000 miles away," I said. "Don't worry. You'll never have to make space for me again." The room went dead still. I stood, placed my napkin down, and said, "Thanks for dinner." Mom whispered my name, barely breathing the word, as if calling me too loudly might pull attention back onto her. But I wasn't leaving to create a scene. I was leaving because I finally understood exactly where I stood at that table and where I no longer needed to sit. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. The Hale house looked the same as ever, but it felt strangely tiny now, like something I had outgrown long before I'd realized it. As I drove away through empty streets, memories replayed themselves in brutal clarity. Mason blowing out candles on a cake that read "To Our Star," all my birthdays passed quietly with supermarket desserts. Dad roaring from the sidelines of Mason's games but forgetting the date of my robotics competition. Mom smoothing tension instead of standing up for me. The pattern had always been there. I had simply stopped pretending it didn't exist. When I reached the hotel, hurt gave way to something sharper: resolve. Leaving that table wasn't the end. It was the boundary I should have drawn years ago. I texted Grandma, "I'm in town. Can I see you tomorrow?" Her reply came in minutes. "Of course, sweetheart." The next morning, we met at a small diner she loved. She took one look at me and said, "You look tired. Not in your face, your spirit." And I almost cried. She had always seen me clearly. Later, at her house, as she napped, I noticed piles of bills and responsibilities she handled alone, responsibilities my father should have helped her with. In that moment, I knew I wasn't abandoning her the way he had abandoned me. When I flew back to Seattle, my apartment felt different. Not just an escape, but something I had built intentionally, piece by piece. I hung new curtains, bought fresh flowers, filled the space with quiet and care. At work, I took on projects that demanded long nights and precision and excelled. I wasn't doing it to be seen. I was doing it because I finally saw myself. That Christmas, I hosted dinner for the people who had actually shown up for me: my neighbor who fixed my heater, my professor, who always encouraged me, a colleague who once drove me to urgent care at a M. They were an odd mix. But around my long walnut table, every chair equal. I felt something loosen inside my chest. And apparently so did the rest of Indianapolis. 3 days later, my father called. He didn't say hello. The whole town's talking about you, he snapped. Those pictures your little Christmas gathering. People are saying you replaced your real family. I leaned against the counter. I didn't post anything. You didn't have to, he barked. Your cousin posted a caption about you building your own table. Do you know how that makes us look? That sounds like a question you should have answered years ago, I said. Silence, sharp and heavy. Then a different voice came onto the line, soft, older. Nora, sweetheart. Grandma. Her voice shook. That dinner you had, it looked beautiful. Dad snapped. Mom, stay out of no, she said, firm and clear. You've controlled this family long enough. It was like hearing a wall crack open. Dad exhaled sharply. You embarrassed us. I almost laughed. I had embarrassed him by celebrating Christmas with people who cared about me. I didn't raise my voice. Dad, you told a room I take up space. And now you're upset because I filled my own? He paced through the phone. Then abruptly, you're coming home for New Year's Eve. We need to fix this. Years ago, those words would have made me feel guilty. Not anymore. I'm not coming back unless we sit at the same table, I said. Equal seats. No head of the table. No hierarchy. Another long pause. Then fine. I didn't expect that. My parents flew to Seattle the next day. My father scanned my apartment the way he always did, searching for something to criticize. Nice place, he muttered. Dinner's ready, I said. 3 chairs, identical, no head seat. My father noticed. We ate quietly at first. Then he finally spoke. So, you're doing well. I am. And you didn't think to tell us. You've never wanted to listen. He opened his mouth to argue but didn't. My mother whispered, we never meant to make you feel less. Intentions don't erase impact, I said. Dad swallowed hard. We protected Mason. He needed more. He needed more because you gave him everything, I replied. And I learned to survive alone. For the first time, he didn't puff up or lash out. He simply looked small, human. Then he said something I never expected. I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. My mother reached for my hand. Can we try? Even if it's slow? I nodded. But I didn't pretend everything was fixed. I'm not moving back, I said. But you're welcome to visit if you sit as equals. If you show up differently than before. My father hesitated, then said quietly, we'll try. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. When they left, my apartment felt steady again. Mine. And as New Year's dawned over Seattle, I felt something I had chased my entire childhood and never found. Peace. Not because my family had changed, but because I finally had. I stepped onto the balcony, breathed in the cold air, and whispered, some kids make their parents proud. Others make themselves free. After New Year's, something unexpected began happening. My father started calling not to criticize, not to demand, but to ask simple questions he had never cared about before. How's work? Are you eating properly? Do you need anything for your apartment? At first, I waited for the familiar sting behind his words, the hidden judgment, the way he used to make even kindness feel like a debt, but it didn't come. My mother texted me every morning with small updates, pictures of the sunrise, recipes she thought I might like, little pieces of her day she had never shared with me before. And Mason, the golden boy of our family, sent a long message one night saying he didn't realize how overshadowed I had been. How every cheer for him might have been silence for me. How he never questioned it because he was too busy basking in the spotlight Dad built around him. I didn't forgive instantly, but I didn't shut the door either. Healing wasn't a single moment, it was a slow turning of a heavy lock. Meanwhile, in Seattle, my life kept shifting in ways that felt both terrifying and freeing. My company promoted me to lead a new project, something that required precision, leadership, and confidence. I didn't even know I had until it was demanded of me. My team respected me in ways my family never had, listening when I spoke, valuing my ideas, relying on my judgment. I found friends who felt more like family than blood ever had. Ava, who brought soup every time I was sick. Mateo, who fixed my leaky sink at midnight. And Jordan, who dragged me out of the apartment when I worked too hard and forgot what sunlight looked like. My apartment became a home, not an escape, not a hiding place, but a space that held laughter, dinners, music, and late-night conversations about dreams I had once been too afraid to speak aloud. And then Grandma called. Her voice was quieter than usual, softer around the edges in a way that made my chest tighten. "Sweetheart," she said, "I want to see you." She didn't have to say anything else. I booked a flight that evening. When I arrived at her house, she smiled the same warm smile she had given me since childhood, but I saw something different in her eyes, tiredness, like her light was dimming at the edges. We sat for hours, sipping tea, talking about everything and nothing. She squeezed my hand and said, "You became everything they never saw." That night, while she slept, I walked through her home, the old photographs, the flower-patterned curtains, the clock that ticked too loudly, and realized she was the only person who had given me unconditional love without asking for anything in return. The next morning, she asked me to bring her a box from the attic. Inside were letters, dozens of them addressed to me. She had written me every week growing up, letters of encouragement, letters of love, letters she never mailed because she knew Dad would throw them away. My throat tightened as I read them, one by one, every word filling a space inside me I hadn't known was empty. That afternoon, my father showed up unannounced. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like the man who controlled every room he walked into. He looked like a son who realized too late how much he had taken his mother for granted. He didn't argue with me. He didn't pretend. He simply said, "She wants us together." So we sat, me, him, my mother, Mason, and for the first time ever, the room felt balanced. No favorites, no hierarchy, no unspoken rules. Grandma rested her hand on top of ours and whispered, "This is the family I always wanted." That night, my father pulled me aside. His voice was low, almost unfamiliar. "I don't know how to fix everything," he said, "but I want to try. Not as a father who made mistakes, but as a man who finally understands them." I didn't hug him. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, because for the first time, I believed him. When I flew back to Seattle, I carried Grandma's letters in my bag and her words in my chest. Healing wasn't a destination. It was a journey, one I finally wasn't walking alone. And I didn't know it yet, but something even bigger was waiting for me. Something that would test everything I had rebuilt and reveal the truth about what my family had been hiding all along. 2 weeks after returning to Seattle, life settled into a strange rhythm, part healing, part rebuilding, part waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then it did. I received a call from an unfamiliar number in Indianapolis. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Is this Nora Hale?" a crisp voice asked. "Yes," I replied. "This is Riley Parker from the Indianapolis District Records Office. We need to discuss an urgent matter involving property filings under your name." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Property filings? In Indianapolis? Under my name? My mind raced. "There must be a mistake," I said. But the woman continued, "Ma'am, we have documents here, signatures, financial agreements, legal forms listing you as a co-owner of a property purchased last year. We sent notices, but none were answered." I felt my heart beat in my throat. Someone used my name. Someone forged my signature. Someone tied me to a debt I never agreed to. And deep down, before she even said the address, I knew exactly who would be behind it. My father, or maybe Mason, or both. "Can you send me copies?" I asked, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my spine. An hour later, an email arrived. I opened the PDF and there it was. My name, my forged signature, and in the space where the other co-owner signed, where everything suddenly made awful sense, I saw it. My father's handwriting. The proof sat on my screen like a betrayal carved in ink. I stared at the document for what felt like forever, my stomach twisting, the room spinning. After all the conversations, after the dinner, after the beginnings of repair, they had still used me, still taken from me, still believed I existed to be convenient. I called Grandma immediately. Her voice was soft but steady. "Sweetheart, listen to me. He didn't do this recently. That filing was before Thanksgiving." I paused. Before Thanksgiving? Before he knew I would walk out? Before our confrontation? "Your father never planned on telling you," she said. "He thought you'd never find out." That didn't make it better. It made it worse. It meant the apology, the "we'll try," the quiet admission of guilt. None of it included acknowledging the biggest betrayal of all. It meant I had sat across from him at my dining table while he hid a knife behind his back. I pulled up my coat and stepped onto the balcony, letting the cold wind hit my face. Anger didn't come first. Hurt did, the kind that sinks deep and heavy, the kind that fills your lungs until breathing feels like work. Then the anger came, sharp, clean, certain. The next morning, I booked a flight, Indianapolis again. This time, not for holidays or healing but for answers. When I walked into my parents' house, the atmosphere shifted like I'd brought a storm with me. My father looked up, startled. "Nora? You should have called. Why is my name on a mortgage?" The room froze. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Mason straightened in his chair. My father's face tightened, his jaw clenching the way it always did when he was caught but refused to admit it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. I pulled out my phone and opened the file. His signature glared back at him like a spotlight. "This," I said. "Explain." His silence was louder than shouting. My mother whispered, "You told me." She agreed. Her voice cracked. "You told me she knew." I felt something inside me snap, not loudly, not violently, but in a quiet, clean break. "The kind you don't come back from. You used me," I said. "Even after everything. Even after pretending we were fixing things." My father stood, shoulders rigid. "I did what I had to do for this family." "No," I said, my voice shaking in a way that wasn't weakness but fury disguised as calm. "You did what benefited you. You used my credit because Mason already ruined his. You forged my signature because you knew I wouldn't agree. You lied to Mom. You lied to me. And you planned to keep lying." Grandma, who had been sitting silently on the couch, suddenly spoke. "Enough." The word cracked through the air like thunder. She struggled to her feet, eyes blazing. "You will not hurt her again." My father turned to her, but she raised a trembling hand. "You have taken from her since the day she was born, her confidence, her peace, her place in this home. And now you take her name?" My father opened his mouth, but for once in his life, he found no words. She pointed at the papers in my hand. "Undo it," she said. Today. The next hours were a blur: phone calls, legal offices, signatures, reversals. My father said little, and what he did say was full of excuses that sounded like dust when spoken aloud. By evening, the forged documents were void. My name was free. My future was mine again. But something else had changed, too, something deeper than paperwork. On my way to the airport, Grandma squeezed my hand. "You saved yourself," she whispered. "And now, he has to live with who he chose to be." When I boarded my flight back to Seattle, I realized something monumental. I wasn't breaking away from my family anymore. I was breaking a cycle. When the plane lifted off, so did I. And this time, I wasn't going back, not as the daughter they ignored, not as the girl they used, but as the woman who finally refused to shrink to fit their comfort. In the middle of the night, my phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a demand or a voice message, it was a photo. My sister had accidentally sent it to me instead of her friends. She was laughing, pointing at my old room, the one they had forced me to give up, and she wrote, "He'll crawl back because he has nowhere left to go." That single picture burned away the last piece of guilt I ever carried. I woke up with a clarity they never expected from me. By morning, I had already found a cheaper place with quieter neighbors, and before lunchtime I had moved the last box out of their world. I didn't tell them I didn't owe them that. My mother discovered it first and called me 7, 8, 12 times in less than an hour. Then my father joined in. Then my sister sent long voice notes pretending to cry like she was the victim. But for me, it was peace. After hours of silence from my side, they finally sent one last text. "So this is really who you are?" And for the first time in my life, I replied honestly, "Yes." And I should have been this person a long time ago. I blocked them right after, my hands steady, my heart finally quiet. For years I had been the babysitter, the backup plan, the wallet, the emotional punching bag. Every complaint I made was twisted into disrespect. But it ended now, not with shouting, not with drama, but with a simple decision to walk away. And here's the part they never expected. I didn't destroy the family. I didn't betray anyone. I just stopped letting them destroy me. And that quiet, final choice became the best revenge I ever took.